Hey everybody, welcome to Planetary Awareness. This is Dave, coming to you with some observations and things I've learned over the last couple years about growing vegetables and different things, and just wanted to share it with you guys. So one thing is, you want to make use of all your perimeter space and vertical space. So growing tomatoes up a fence or any kind of trellis system is wonderful. I like to prune the lower leaves to help give better airflow and basically take the suckers off, they call them, in these elbows. See that? Just pinch that off. I need to go through a little bit more over here and do that, but we probably have 300 or 400 tomato plants. You can use pruners. It's a lot faster actually if you let them get way out of hand. But if you're just pinching off the little suckers, you can just use your fingers. Sugar snap peas have been awesome, incredibly sweet. So those are nitrogen fixers, right? So they're helping the tomatoes grow, and soon enough they're going to be done as it gets too hot. But they do continue to flower. The more you pick them, the more you're going to get. But later on, we're going to have beans take over. So as the sugar snap peas are done, the beans will take over. I'll let a lot of this lettuce go to seed, and maybe it'll sprout up around here in the fall. I'm going to go more into letting vegetables go to seed and your annuals go to seed, because I think it's pretty important actually. You can see these radishes going to seed here, and these little pods are actually edible. Whoa, really spicy, but good. We got tomatillos in here. These are actually a yellow variety. Really sweet. And they actually have a kind of a weird flavor too, like a Cheetos flavor. I shouldn't say it's weird. It tastes good, but it's weird that it tastes like Cheetos. I actually call them Toma Cheetos. All right, the cilantro is really important. So, I planted all this and it bolted pretty quickly. And that tends to happen a lot when you plant the cilantro plants in the ground and it's hot out and they bolt. But you know what? It's a really good thing because it brings in all these pollinators. You may not be able to see it, but there's tons of little flies and bees and parasitic wasps actually that feed off the nectar of the cilantro. And then they might come right here to the kale, and I look at this and there's no cabbage worms, right? That's because the worms are all gobbled up by the wasps. The wasps eat the worms. So I haven't sprayed any of this kale, and pretty much bug free. There might be some white flies. Yeah, there's little spots, but they don't really do much damage. They can, but not too much, and you can really just wash them off, and all this stuff is still fine to go to market. Now there is a little insect I spot over here. This is called the harlequin beetle. And this guy does a lot of damage. But I really don't see many of them here. And I can show you really where they're all at. They're all at last year's crop, which we'll go over there now actually. Or we'll at least head that way. There's a lot of stuff might have to check out in the meantime. Strawberries. So this is all going to be for strawberries, but in the meantime we're planting annuals. You want to use up all the space you can with something. There's okras, planted zucchinis. There's sweet potatoes and beets and lettuces and cilantros in between. All the kale and broccoli and stuff. I know I'm talking about vegetables, and it's definitely a topic here, but look at that fig. Look how small it is and how many little figlets it's popping up. That's the figoin, aka Verdino del Nord. Thank God for Ross the Fig Boss introducing me so that I could grow that variety. It's so precocious, fruits really well, and I think it's pretty split resistant. Hardy, kind of stays a dwarf size. Anyway, there's so much growing on. We don't want to get off topic. Look at these sweet potatoes, real luscious looking. They're growing out of these barrels. You can see this mound has strawberries on top and sunflowers do a really good job at, what's the word, aeration, I think it is. It aerates the soil. The roots, break up the soil and allow other plants to grow better. So like these sweet potatoes that we put in the mounds, maybe they'll be able to actually grow down there real well, because the previous year and this year the sunflowers are breaking up that soil. The figs, of course, love it. That's an LSU purple. So we plant figs at like the base of these mounds. Shout out to Big Bill from Off the Beaten Path Nursery. Showed me that method. And the cinder blocks, really help as well. Can't get off the topic of figs, it's just such a great thing. Here's a Moro de Caneva about to hopefully ripen the Breba. But anyway, at the base of these mounds, we got potatoes on both sides. The corn's going really strong. Rutabagas, beets. We just harvested a bunch of turnips this morning. You want to have your chives. The corn, I've had a lot of success over the last few years because we do successional planting, just as with most of our annual crops. We do different rounds. The round 1 is over there. You see how tall they are. It's almost 4th of July and they're above knee high. Round 2, round 3, and having these different rounds of plantings allow them to pollinate each other, and you get more production. There should be hundreds and hundreds of ears in this section here. So we're excited with that. You can see the strawberries just sending out their runners. So we really encourage that and make sure we keep weeding around this area. I think we got some basil here. Look at this. So, you know, one cool thing is with letting your plants go to seed, and basil's really an easy one to let go to seed. You'll find these little volunteers just popping up. Here's more basil. So basil, and I'm behind on getting my basil starts in the ground. So this is great because, you know, there's always an abundance. This parsley, you know, we let this go to flower, and it's just sort of a biannual, but eventually it goes to flower and brings in those pollinators as well, of course. There's something really just awesome about letting your vegetables and your herbs go to flower and live a full life cycle for many reasons. You know, you get the pollinators, you get a lot of volunteers sprouting around. And in this instance, we're using the old kale plants as a trap crop. You see all those harlequin beetles in there? So, you know, we have this infestation, but you see it's just kales that are going to seed, which we'll let it go to seed. Maybe we'll collect some of the seed or at least spread it out, or, you know, the wind will blow it around and we'll get volunteers. Then we'll come in and just take the plants out and get rid of them. And we'll want to do that with all our brassicas for the most part, outdoors by maybe the end of July. That way by mid-August, late August, we can start planting another round, and then we won't have as much insect pressure out here. You know, if you can give at least 2 weeks in between, you know, for those pests to die out or leave because there's no food source, then you'll be able to plant your new starts out here. Dill is another one. I'm really hoping that, you know, this will go to seed and spread. I have a feeling it will. This kohlrabi right here looks like it's done with its seeds. See that? So these could actually be collected or spread around. And you might have a plant that's a little more adapted to this climate. Onions are a great one to have in the garden. They really put out a lot of, you know, scents that sort of confuse insects. The chives, you know, anything in that allium family, it's good to have around. These onions are bulbing up nicely. Our garlic has been harvested, although we left a couple of these. Oh wow, look at that. Looks like small little bulbs. Wow, that is cool, you know. Now maybe what I can do here is plant some of these little guys in the old holes where we just harvested the garlic. You know, put them in and Just see what happens here, you know. I think this is a red Russian variety from the looks of it. So that'll be really interesting, you know. If we can perennialize garlic in that way. See, I'm just learning every year, you know. It's such a process. Because I keep having to like buy bulbs or buy starts, you know, and to replant them. Because I end up selling or using ones from the previous year. But I really need to get it so I never have to buy garlic again. And I'm hoping that's going to happen this year. We'll see what happens. I'll show you the harvested garlic here in a little bit. But we got some good bulbs, including elephant garlic and stuff like that. Asparagus, a perennial vegetable that can literally just keep growing for decades. So incredibly delicious. See, this is going to seed now. Early in the season, I don't let it do that. But now that we're approaching July, I sort of let it go like that. Maybe we'll get some seed and then I can chop it, and then maybe it'll grow back in the fall for another harvest. This is an interesting perennial vegetable called skirret. I think it's a brassica if I'm not mistaken. Wow. Really awesome flavor. I'm just starting to eat it, you know, it's like a new one for me. But wonderful. We have artichokes, although that might be a cardoon. There's some of these are artichokes, some of these are cardoons. It's a nice broccoli head. Right after we harvested the garlic, we came in here and plugged in cantaloupe. It'll sprawl out nicely here and make use of the space during this time, and then, you know, maybe I'll plant garlic here again. Who knows? Or maybe those little seeds. We've left some of the stuff to continue to go to seed. Here's a couple more examples. This is elephant garlic. See, it looks like there's little seeds in there developing. So that'll be cool. I've never grown garlic from seed or even let it go to seed. Same with carrots. Look at that. So because I have more space now, it's easier to let the plants do that. Continue to get strawberries. I have different varieties like planted in different areas so that I can keep track of those varieties. But again, you want to really make sure you do your weeding so that the strawberries don't get overtaken. They really need to get out there and spread their runners. You see? So there's a runner. We'll go ahead and plant that with one hand, and that'll sprout. Things like clover is good, but even that can take over. And so it's good to come in here and give everything a good weed. Here's like a Swiss chard, I believe, going to seed. There's beets going to seed. There's some big boys. These might actually still be edible. Pretty darn large. Oh. The shipping container we're gonna get set up to be a walk-in cooler. Did want to show you one other perennial vegetable. You know, I think I'm gonna make the topic of this video perennializing your vegetables, because we've showed a lot of ways to do that. And here's one way. You know, we have this purple tree collard, right? Now this thing is massive. Look at that trunk. So my goal with this is to be able to take some cuttings off of this, or at the very least let it go to seed and let it sprout up. But you can also dig it up and put it in a pot, bring it inside a greenhouse or whatever, and then replant it again. I might actually do that. But you know, it's just a lot of work to year after year plant your seeds and then plant them out here. Very labor intensive. So if we can let nature sort of do it for us, you know, maybe we won't have to plant as much parsley, because it'll just start going to seed out here. And you know, you can see examples of the basil. Hopefully the dill will do the same. You know, the kale, beets, turnips, broccoli, kohlrabi, radishes. We're letting all this stuff go to seed, and we'll just see what happens. I mean, the lettuce is just an example. I see them popping up all over the place because I just keep letting them go to seed. And oftentimes something that goes to seed and passes on the next offspring. And maybe we'll let some of these turnips, when it passes on off the offspring in that environment, it'll then even do better than if you had planted it yourself, because it just sort of sprouts at the perfect time. It's been acclimated to the climate from the mother plant. Maybe these kales will let go to flower too, possibly. We'll see what happens. You know, definitely some of these lettuces will continue to go to flower. So just looking at ways to make things easier. I mean, you definitely get volunteer tomatoes, volunteer all kinds of stuff. You know, if you don't till the soil and you just keep adding organic material, you know, you're going to get volunteers if you let them go to seed. And you can decide if you want to keep those volunteers or not. I mean, I do. Sometimes I'll weed them out if I need to. You notice the clay on here on the zucchini. the surround, you know, because these bugs, these squash beetles can knock the eggs off, or just keep spraying, or both. Cucumber beetles, the squash bugs, they'll just tear this stuff up. Some farms use row cover. I really am trying to reduce plastic. I sort of use enough of it at this point and starting to get tired of it. So the clay is good, even though you got to spray it every time it rains typically. But if I just get these plants, you know, a little bit older, then basically they'll be strong enough to fight off some sugar snap peas. What's up, man? Nurseries really coming along. I wanted to give a few more examples of things in here. I won't make this video too long. Just a few more minutes. Having fun with it. I need to get out here and film more. Those elderberries are looking nice, blooming. These are parsnips. Another example of a perennial vegetable. You wouldn't think of them as such, but these, you know, I let them go to seed every year, and, you know, I have a bunch of parsnips that I can harvest in the spring. And they're pretty darn good. The fennel is just a great one to have for the butterflies. We actually do have to like weed this out because it's gotten so wild out here. It's like a fennel jungle. Got cucumbers down here in between the grapes, making use of all the space. We got cantaloupes, honeydews, more zucchini. Anywhere there's space, we try to utilize it, you know. Potatoes, another perennial. If you are using wood chips or some kind of mulch, and you just take the biggest potato and put it right back. You can harvest and plant your potatoes at the same time. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks to Paul Gauchi, Back to Eden gardening method. I'll show you the rue going to flower. Some really good stuff. But yeah, you see the cilantro out here as well. Oh man, gotta show you this. This raspberry is just phenomenal. It's called a black cap raspberry. So good. These are much bigger than the wild ones we have, but also growing in really good soil out here. Anyway, we got tons of cucumbers over here. You know, I can't tell you how valuable this vertical space is. You get some weeds you got to manage, but you know, all this vertical space, which was acting as deer fencing, you know, we make use of it. It's a prime example of permaculture. Get your weeds though, you know, poke weeds, and somehow some sunflowers got back here, some sunchokes. They're a wonderful perennial vegetable as well. More carrots. And look at that, you know, there's a wasp right on the end there. Yeah, so cucumbers, flowering, make use of the vertical space, spray the clay. Because, you know, things like our apples, this might be like the only apple out here. You get that late frost at 28 degrees. Just crushes those blooms. So having the annuals is great. Always going to have food. Perennials, you're always going to have food. But keep planting a diversity of things. This is like a palette and you're just painting plants. But you got to know what goes together, what companion plants go together. Plant things under the fruit trees. Gotta get me a gooseberry. See, the gooseberries are great. They grow in the shade. But I think I covered a lot of vegetables for you guys. Perennializing your vegetables. Just keep it in mind. You know, you can let them grow side by side with your fruiting crops. This is a huge berry. Look at that. For a black cap, I mean, wow. Anyway, it's been a lot of work lately, and the heat sort of got to me. I got fatigued. But all I can say is just keep going. And the more work you put in, the more it'll pay out later. You just gotta keep persevering and keep the faith. Nature has a way and has an intelligence. So it's a blessing to be a steward of the land, and I encourage you guys to do the same. Feel free to comment or ask any questions, and see you for the next video.